In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to work PAILs into the 90-90. More specifically, I'm going to show you how to apply a progressive angular isometric load to the trail leg. So if we're trying to work internal rotation, we're going to want to make sure that we are at end range internal rotation in this position. And the way we're going to do that is by dropping the pelvis, or in this case, if my left leg is my trail leg, I'm dropping my left glute towards the floor. So that's going to wind me up into end range internal rotation, or whatever is your end range, whatever you can tolerate. So if we're trying to do a PAILs contraction, we're just trying to contract the stuff that's being lengthened or the stuff on the progressive side, right? So if this is my regressive side, because if my foot went up any higher, I would be in more internal rotation. I'm going to contract towards the progressive side, so towards the floor. So for the PAILs, we're going to be driving the foot into the ground. Now there are a couple of details here that I want to point out. So let's start off with the basics. If I want to do a PAILs contraction, there's something that I have to do before I try and create any effort. And I'm going to just flip so you can kind of see my position. My right hand is going to be my kickstand, and it's going to serve as the foundation of my leverage in this position. If I try and push, if you got to think about it, if my base of support is here, right? My left leg is out to the side way more. So if I try and push and my hand wasn't here, I would either fall this way or my spine would have to compensate by doing this. So if I don't give myself the support, I can't do a PAILs, because my body knows that if I push past a certain point, I'm going to tip and lose my position. That's why you have to create the leverage by dropping your hand down, really creating that kickstand. So now when you push down this way, you can push against the floor. The floor is going to push you back. That way you can create really good stiffness and rigidity through the torso, so the force stays where it needs to stay in that hip capsule, okay? So if I'm here, I like to keep my hand slightly outside of my hip, and I like to actually press into the floor as I drive my hip down right into more internal rotation. And then as I push my shin into the floor, I'm pressing my hand, and then I hold. So that is how you load a progressive angular isometric load, a PAIL, right, in internal rotation. Now, if you want to make it tougher, you wind up by rotating towards the trail leg. And as you do that, you wind up into more of an internally rotated position in that hip joint. And you repeat. Same thing, adjust the hand where you need it to be in order for you to feel like you can push without losing position. Now, something else that you can do, right? If you notice difficulty or stiffness or pain, maybe even discomfort through the knee, you might not be tolerating some of the torque that's going through it, because if you push down with the foot, you're trying, this lever arm of that shin creates a lot of torque that has to go through the knee joint into the hip. So sometimes people can't tolerate that because they feel like almost like a gapping on the medial knee or the inside, right? So instead of pushing harder with the shin and the foot, you can push harder going into hip extension, which is fine because we are already in an internally rotated position. So as long as we create tension and stiffness by loading through the shin a little bit, we can still take some of that load but isolate it into the hip by driving the hip forward. So if I think about my ASIS, which is that pointy bone in front of the hip, it's driving forward as I squeeze my glute. You're still pushing down because we still want some of that rotational torque to be there, right, in that joint. But that's why we're driving the shin and the foot down only enough to what we can tolerate, but then the rest, the effort is really ramping up, going into hip extension. What you'll notice is way more of a stretch or engagement of the tissue here on the groin, because as you go into hip extension while in this internally rotated position, you'll feel a lot of that stuff get wound up. And if you also wanted to make this a little tougher, or to wind the hip joint and bias more extension, all you have to do is just slide that hip back. Because if you slide the hip back, now instead of just working internal rotation in this neutral kind of like abductor position, you can go into more of this open 90-90 or into this almost borderline pigeon, right? But you do want to maintain the knee bent. You don't want to keep it completely straight, or else you can't really create that torque. If you keep it bent to 90 degrees, it creates that rotation that you're looking for, right? So you can push the foot down still, right? But you have that freedom to kind of adjust the angle of knee flexion to adjust for any discomfort you're feeling at the knee. But like I said, you can always drive through the hip, and that's going to take some of that away. And that's how you do a PAILs contraction in the 90-90 for internal rotation.